Call this meeting to order. This is a special meeting of Fayette County Commissioners. This is a special meeting for one purpose only, to consider discipline or no discipline for Mr. Danny Jarboe, an employee of the Fayette County Highway Department. On advice of legal counsel, I'm advised to basically restate the allegations, the accusations, and let the record reflect that Mr. Dave Altman from Danny's union is here as his representative. Mr. Altman, you're free to interrupt, ask questions, or make statements or clarifications at any time. Okay? On January 7th of this year, the allegation is that Mr. Jarboe, an employee of the Fayette County Highway Department, came to work in the early hours of the morning. There were other employees there. He's alleged to have made some disparaging remarks using expletives about some of the employees, at which time he went back outside. He came back in, he made the same statements again. The highway supervisor, Richard Quorum, confronted him about the remarks. The situation elevated to the point where Mr. Jarboe is alleged to have chest bumped his supervisor, Richard Quorum, and to have threatened to expletive deleted and break his neck. So here's what was done. Mr. Quorum called me around 9:30 in the morning that day. I told him I would come in and sit down and talk with him. He told me the incident basically as I just related it. I informed him that I wanted a police report done, so I contacted the sheriff and asked him to send a deputy down to make a report. I know as a retired police officer that the actions could constitute battery, so I wanted a police report, which an impartial agency to take care of the situation. The deputy was former Sheriff Billy Wason. He interviewed Richard and the employees there who were witnesses. We have 7, I believe, witness statements, and he also talked to Mr. Jarboe and got a written statement from him. And Mr. Altman, you have a copy of all that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Last Friday, we held an executive session to discuss this matter, look into it. Mr. Altman was there at that time, as was during the second part of the meeting. Mr. Jarboe came in to be able to tell his side of the story. On advice of counsel, we have to reiterate basically what was told in that meeting. So the county handbook violations, if you'll give me just a moment, are 2 from group 2 and 1 from group 3. And the group 2 offense that is applicable here is number 13, the second sentence of which reads, making threatening remarks to supervisors or others. The other violation in group 2 is number 20, use of abusive or threatening language towards supervisors, other employees, or the public. That group 2 has disciplines listed as first offense, 3 working day suspension without pay, second offense, 10 days suspension without pay or reduction in pay and position. A third offense is discharge. He's also accused of a group 3 violation, which is number 10, which reads fighting or attempting to injure other employees, supervisors, or persons. The discipline for that reads first offense, any appropriate discipline up to and including discharge. And there are no specifications for a second or third offense. I sent Mr. Jarboe a letter which was delivered by the Sheriff's Department Wednesday. And at the meeting last Friday, he was advised verbally of what he was accused of. This Wednesday, day before yesterday, the Sheriff's Department delivered a letter to Mr. Jarboe, and it reads, Sir, Fayette County Board of Commissioners will meet in special session this Friday, January 30th, 2015 at 10 a.m. in the Commissioners Room at the Fayette County Courthouse. The meeting has one agenda only, and that is to make a decision on the facts presented in our executive session last Friday, January 23rd, 2015. Please be in attendance, and you are more than welcome to have your union representation with you. And I repeated in here what I just stated as to what the charges were and the penalties. And I said we'll see you at the meeting Friday at 10 a.m. I did, the day of the incident, inform Mr. Quorum that Mr. Jarbo was to be notified and told that he was to be suspended with pay, and that he was to be advised he was not to be on the county highway department property where he was subject to trespass. The reason for that is it's a workplace violence situation, and I wanted to take every precaution to make sure that this didn't happen, something bad didn't happen while this situation was being investigated. This situation has taken a while to be investigated, but the day of the incident or a day or so later, I spoke with Mr. Quorum and his 2 local union reps, and I informed them to make sure that their international rep was aware of this situation and what was going on. And I think, unless I've forgotten something, I think that's pretty much the situation. Mr. Altman, I'll turn the floor over to you to make any requests, any presentations, any statements that you wish to make.
I think, Mr. Commissioner, your summary of what was discussed at our last meeting was spot on. But I think there were a lot of situations or issues that played into the situation the day that this incident happened, because of the cold weather and vehicles being started earlier in the day that week, and this particular day they weren't started prior to the employees coming to work. And when I looked at it, I felt that it was kind of a work ethics issue that came down. Someone else's work ethics were different than someone else's, and through the investigation at the last meeting, Mr. Jarbo didn't recall chest bumping or saying what he's been charged with saying to the superintendent. And when he was confronted with statements from witnesses, he himself even agreed that that's not appropriate, should not have happened. He apologized for doing it. And I guess if there's anything that I would like to say, I would like to say that you've looked at 2 different rules under Group 2 offenses and 1 rule under Group 3.
Yes, sir.
Even though the rule under Group 3 talks about fighting or attempting to injure someone, I personally don't believe that he did. One of the witnesses said that both men were yelling. It got very loud. There's a possibility that Mr. Jarbo did bump chests. They were probably standing toe-to-toe, nose-to-nose, yelling at each other. So I guess I would look back at the rules or offenses that fall under Group 2. And if the commissioners have decided to take any action, I would hope that any discipline issued would fall under the Group 2 violation, which would warrant an unpaid suspension rather than a termination.
Okay. Reference what I told you right before the meeting about the confidentiality of that response from the
Yes.
people. It does say it's on the heading here, confidential client privilege, not the
Okay.
police. Okay. I personally find it distasteful to be sitting here in judgment of anybody. I don't like that. No human without his flaws, and that includes me. And life has been good to most people and given a lot of people second and even third chances in a lot of situations. What I'm charged with is making sure that this is an isolated incident and that it won't happen again. Having said that, in our meeting last Friday, Mr. Jarbo said that he did not remember chest bumping Richard. And what he said was that if I did that in the associated language with the threatening remarks. If I did that, I apologize. The word if, it bothers me. If I had chest bumped one of my chiefs of police, I would have remembered that. I promise you I would have remembered that. I'm concerned that there's no remorse for the incident, and that insinuating him back into the workforce down there, we're taking a chance of this same situation arising again. And that bothers me. Times are not like they were 50 years ago, where a couple guys who disagree would go out behind the shed and talk it out or duke it out and then go sit down and have a cup of coffee. We're in different times nowadays. And as being responsible for what happens down there, I'm reluctant to put him back down there. I'll just be honest and open and upfront with both of you. But as president, I can't make the motion. I simply want to tell you up front what I'm feeling, why I'm feeling that, and I'm going to let the other two commissioners make any statements. We'll withhold any judgments as to what you're going to do until there's an actual vote, at which time I'll again give Mr. Altman a chance to make any statements or ask any questions he wants to.
I guess my only statement would be,
Please.
if you look at his tenure with the Fayette County Highway Department, he's been there just over 10 years, I believe. And there's never been any incidents.
We were advised to look at his personnel record. I do have a copy of that. He has some violations that are extremely minor. He showed up late for work a few days, okay? If he's like I am, God didn't make me a morning person, I can completely understand that, okay? So from what I've seen, any and all violations were, he was written up by a supervisor, but I don't think that's anything, in my opinion, to consider here at this meeting. So you're right, he does not have any serious violations with his 10 years at the Highway Department, am I correct? Okay. And that's for the record. Mrs. King, do you have anything to say?
I too am concerned about violence in the workplace and the language that was used and threats, that's not to be, just can't be happening. And I feel like Danny did not show a lot of remorse or reluctance. He did say he apologized if he had done those things. But I think if I'd threatened my superior, had my fist all knotted up and threatened to knock their head off, I would have remembered that. And the 10 years of work experience and not having had any violence, it's a really tough decision to make. And there'd be no hearing if anything were to happen again. But having been an employee for 10 years and not having done anything other than being late to work, and cars don't start sometimes, and there are extenuating circumstances that can cause that. I'm like Frank, I'm not a morning person either. But it's just a hard call. But we can't have people threatening co-workers or supervisors.
The three of us did our own investigation ourselves, pretty much. I mean, kind of fact-finding, looking at things, talking to people. I went to the highway garage, and after all this had been done, and I wanted to see consistency in the story. I wanted to make sure nothing changed. Nothing changed. I actually had somebody walk me through exactly how it happened from start to finish. I'm not going to go into an explicit detail over But the charges presented today of what's being accused is what we're here for. But some of the other things that I was hearing, and I wasn't hearing it from one individual person, I was hearing it from the entire group collectively at the highway garage, did bother me a little bit. And I'm not going to go into, unless you really want to hear, exactly what it was. The 10 years of service at the highway garage is weighing on my mind pretty heavy. I mean, this isn't 1991. You can't just go across the street and find a job somewhere else. They're hard to find. And I think in my own mind, I don't think Danny would have purposely done anything I want to re-say that. I don't think Danny would have intentionally, set out to lose his job or anything like that. Tempers flare, tempers get hot, people get mad. But I will say upon my investigation, I've seen a pattern. It's been a pattern, but there's nothing on documentation, just what I've heard. So I'm not going to even let that enter into my decision today. The decision today is what's at hand, what we've been told, and like I said, in any environment, in any position, in any place of workplace, anywhere, this is one of the things in a handbook that's not tolerated from any corporation, any government, any employee entity. With that said, I'll pass it over to Mr. Jackson, and we'll go from there.
Mr. Altman, I'll give you another chance here in just a second. Do the two of you we can recess for 15 minutes. We can't discuss it amongst ourselves, but if you guys want to sit and think about what you want to do, we can recess while you do that, or I can just call for a motion, however you want to do it.
You want to take a recess, or what do you want to do?
Just go ahead and call for a motion. Okay. Let Dave speak.
Mr. Altman or Mr. Jarbo, either one of you are free to make any statements or anything you wish to say.
Before Danny speaks, I guess I would just like to say one thing, and then, I've been put in a situation that Danny's in, when a coworker gets put into a position of being a supervisor. And, everybody down there likes Richard. There's different opinions as to whether or not they think he's a good superintendent. And I think, that's probably played part of this, that to be a superintendent, you're not a friend of the workers anymore. I mean, you are their superior. The workers have to follow orders. But I think there's still the camaraderie. They're all equal. And I'm just wondering how much that played into this. And I don't want to criticize Richard, because I like Richard Corman. He's a good guy. But I think, there's a lot of different dynamics that have played into this. And again, I guess I'm just looking at Danny's tenure. You can find people that don't like people. If you go out and start asking questions, you're going to hear all kinds of things. And I appreciate Commissioner Bedore going and doing his due diligence and talking to the guys. But I really would hope that you'd be open-minded, look at the case as what it is, and show some compassion. Just like you said, jobs are not plentiful out there. The guy does a good job. And I guess, that being said, I don't have anything else to say. I would just hope that you show some leniency and not terminate his employment.
Mr. Jarbo, do you want to make a statement?
I would say, just like I said the other day, there's things that going on down there that you guys don't know about. I can guarantee you that. That's all I got to say.
What to be considered, again, to reiterate, is 2 Group 2 violations. The penalty for those violations are: first offense, a 3 working day suspension without pay. Second offense, which doesn't apply here, or nor does the third offense. On the Group 3 violation, is penalty is any appropriate discipline up to and including discharge. So that's what you have before you to consider in your motion. How far do you want to go? What do you want to do? I've given my explanations and reasons, my reasoning, as have the 2 of you. So at this time, the chair will entertain a motion.
Well, I guess it's on me. Upon further issue of the said violation, I would make a motion in what I found in my investigation. What I found in my investigation as termination effective immediately as my motion. If you don't want a second.
There's a motion on the floor to terminate Mr. Jarbo's employment immediately. Is that the motion? Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, a motion's been made to terminate Mr. Jarbo's employment immediately. There is a second. Question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. 3 ayes. Mr. Jarbo, you are terminated effective immediately.
Right.
Mr. Altman, anything else to say before I dismiss the meeting?
No.
You are free to have access to anything that you want other than what I can't give you confidentiality. If you're going to appeal this or whatever, that's completely understandable. That's your job, and I completely understand it. So, nothing else being said, this meeting is adjourned.